Welcome to What Is It About the Weather, a podcast where we explore the many ways in which weather intertwines itself into our lives. I'm your host, Mark Jelanic, and this week we're going to be talking about, well, summer. Right, big shocker there. We're there. It's there. I don't care how you look at summer, how you define summer. If you're in the northern hemisphere, whether you use the month-based system that I tend to lean towards, where you use the solar-based calendar longest day of the year stuff, it doesn't matter which you use. We are officially in summer. For those of you south of the equator, congratulations, you're officially in winter. Now, you may or may not like that option. And actually, that's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about craving summer. But before we do that, let's hit a couple actual weather things that caught my eye this week. It's possible that the highest temperature ever in the Arctic Circle has been recorded. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius. That's pretty warm for up there. Kind of toasty. Now, it's preliminary. They got to go through all the checks. But so far, so good. So far, it looks a valid thing. And I would guess that would melt a little snow if there was any left on the ground. They may not want that. I don't know. I don't know who lived in this little town. I didn't really pay attention to where in Siberia this town is, but that probably had them scrambling for some air conditioning, which they also probably don't have. Hopefully they cool off soon. Something more seasonable for them. Now, it's not uncommon for interior parts of the continents to have large variations in temperatures. Big swings from season to season. But I don't think that they were expecting to get quite that warm. The other thing that caught my eye was the Saharan air layer, or SAL, as we call it sometimes in the tropical cyclone space. And maybe you heard reports that, it's interesting. Weather news, just like anything else, right? I saw this report about the hot temperature. I actually caught both of these stories. There had been following them long before, any general media picked up on them, but almost always general media, different outlets will go to weather news when they need filler. So sometimes you see these things when it's sort of slow news. With everything else going on in the world lately, haven't seen it as much. But both of these were at least ones that people asked me about, right? Because they made it to what you would call their mainstream outlets, however they absorb their news. So back to the Saharan air layer. What is it? And, that's kind of what it's like. People are going, tell me about this thing. Why does it matter? What is it? Well, best way I know to describe it in short is Saharan air layer is really just a reflection of air that's flowing off the northern part of Africa over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, just a little primer, refresh. When you're near the equator, weather is generally flowing from east to west. Those of us who live in the mid-latitudes, which a great deal of us on the planet do, experience weather that flows generally west to east. So we kind of forget sometimes that the flow near the equator is the other way around. So it just means that weather's flowing from the large Sahara Desert over the Atlantic. Sometimes when those air masses are particularly powerful in their movement or strong in their movement or their flow, they pick up a lot of dust, right? And they carry that dust over the ocean, and it can land just about anywhere. I mean, it will reach, some of it is reaching all the way to parts of Central America and the United States that often don't receive that much dust, or these events aren't as large. Now, from a tropical cyclone standpoint, it tends to suppress development of tropical cyclones, creates a lot of dry air, kills off, because it changes the dynamics of the atmosphere. It tends to kill off a lot of ability for convective activity to take place. Now, that's it from a scientific standpoint. What does it really matter to you? Probably not much. Some places probably, in the islands or the Caribbean saw a fair amount of dust. And like I said, even parts of the coastal areas of the U.S. or Central America are going to see that. As you get into higher latitudes, or higher elevations, I should say, not latitudes, you're less likely to see it. And actually higher latitudes as well, because the general airflow is not going to carry it there. But for those that are down near the coast or on the islands, you may have experienced some of this. And the initial evaluation of this event is it may have been the strongest ever that we've ever seen of that, again, in recorded time. It's a little harder to go back since prior to us recording it, but still a meaningful event. And took our early active tropical cyclone season in the Atlantic and put it on halt for a little while, but that probably won't last forever. All right, let's get to the main topic. Enough of me babbling about actual weather. Let's talk about things that weather does to us. Why do you people love summer? Now, in the early days of this podcast back in 2016, I had a little companion sort of series called You Ask, We Answer. It's little video sessions that I did. And I did a thing about summer foods. And you've heard me. How many times? I'm not a big fan of the heat. Not a big fan of summer per se. Doesn't mean I don't like summer. But I think because I have so many connections growing up in a hot, humid place, I always think of summer as being a time that, in many ways, I didn't enjoy. But I do enjoy summer foods. It's the big growing season. You get all this fresh food. How can you not appreciate that? So, again, I did that video. But there are other things, right, that I like. So, I like the food, as I mentioned. I like the break. The connotation is always, school was out for the summer, had some time off. You get to spend time going on trips to visit, maybe relatives or things like that. But this is fun in the trip of itself, right? So you do certain things. Maybe you are a little more geared towards a committed, family trip somewhere. But yeah, I don't know, going to the pool, cooling off. But see, that's the thing. So being out in the water, that sort of thing. I enjoy that part of summer. So again, not that I don't like summer, but I know some people just really love summer. And am I that unusual for not liking it? That's what I was wondering. Why do people crave it? And maybe why don't I crave it? And I even heard people talk about this week. There's a tech show that I listen to, Daily Tech News Show. You've heard me mention it before. They have kind of a little pre-show, post-show that I tend to listen to from time to time. And there are a couple hosts on there, and they were talking about the differences just between them. That some people really like the temperature to be warmer, some don't. So I know it's not just me. But more often than not, if I'm reading about things, people can't wait for summer. You don't hear people going, oh, I can't wait for winter to get here, unless it's a really hot day. If it's really, really hot, I think we all kind of fold into that mold of, yeah, I'd like it to cool off. But generally speaking, people wait for summer. They talk about summer. So why? Right? Is it, for instance, some of the things I like? I'm sure that's part of it. Staying cool in the water. Fresh fruit or vegetables. It just doesn't get any better in summertime. As I covered in that episode, like watermelon and fresh peaches, and they're just really juicy and tasty. Not fruit that you're having to try to figure out how to eat because it's so hard or not ripe, right? Or maybe it's things like, again, it's the staying cool part. It's like the ice cream truck, the sounds of an ice cream truck coming around in the neighborhood. It's a perfect thing even here, even with COVID going on and everything. One of the things I've not heard a shortage of is ice cream trucks. Seems perfect for it, right? You go up, everything's pre-wrapped, walk away, consume on your own. It's ideal. Or maybe it is more fundamental. Maybe it is this psychological thing about being with family and friends and doing excursions and escapes. So is it just psychological? Is it affixed to these memories of the past, a nostalgic sort of thing, or is there something more fundamental, right? So let's get past the idea of it being just basically psychological, because that plays into everything that we tend to like or appreciate. But everybody's life experiences are different, and I can't imagine that because you could say the same thing about holiday times, right? And being with family and friends. And I don't hear that turning people into winter lovers. So I had to imagine it's something more basic than that, something more fundamental than that. And we've talked in the past about the length of day and about seasonal disorder, and that's real, right? But at a top level, we don't necessarily fully understand that. We can speculate that it has to do with the amount of light that your body receives, because usually summertime in most places, this isn't true everywhere, but most places, you're getting longer days and more sunlight, right? So maybe it's at a fundamental level that's just the chemical response that our body has to having more sunlight, or not feeling like you're locked up, that it's so cold you got to stay inside and you can go outside. So there is a chemical change that takes place when we spend more time around light or even outside. Now, some of those, as you guys know, can be a bad thing, as I've experienced. But generally speaking, what we do understand to some level is some of those chemical reactions may be actually what's driving the desire for that wonderful light summertime fruits that we eat. Okay? And even when you get to food, right, you can imagine, okay, I want ice cream because it helps me cool off. It's a logical thing. But again, that's more like saying I like ice cream in the summer than it is I like summer because there's ice cream. I mean, ice cream year round. But maybe you have this kind of general connection that it's somehow better in the summertime because it is really cooling you off. And there's even obvious connections, like we tend to like saltier foods in the summertime. Although that's probably likely a trigger because we're dealing with dehydration or not drinking enough. And even if you're an active person, research has shown that athletes tend to perform better under the right conditions, and sometimes even hot can be better. Now, it's hot, dry that tends to be better, and that probably gets into the whole idea of evaporative cooling, that you can still get to peak performance but yet not overheat. But when you heat up, you tend to drive blood flow further into your body when your body's really warm. And that's why they tell you shouldn't exercise, or maybe you're more prone to pulling muscles or things. Because your body being warm is just a more efficient machine in terms of utilizing the fullness of the body, if you will. So our circulation's better if our body can get warm and stay warm. Still, does that make you crave summer? Does that make people want to talk about summer, live for summer? Not necessarily. It might be for a few people. And I will say that, when I work out, I have zones that I prefer. I went out for a bike ride this week, actually. 6 o'clock in the morning. I got on my bike, went out for a ride, and I was reminded of some basic things because I don't do that often. One, I may be a morning person, which generally speaking I am, but I'm not a morning exercise person, which I knew in the past, and I tested it. And it probably has something more to do with it was a break in my normal routine, right? I didn't get up and have a cup of coffee and go through sort of a process where my body actually wakes up. So maybe I'm a morning person, partly though that my body still wakes up and goes through a process of all the systems starting to fire. And maybe it works well mentally. Maybe I'm sharp mentally in the morning, but physically it's not my ideal time. Now, I did it to avoid the heat of the day because we're dealing with a certain amount of heat, not Siberian heat, but it's gotten pretty warm here. 90 Fahrenheit, low 30s on the Celsius scale. So what is it? What maybe drives these chemical changes? What makes us want this sort of food? Is there something more basic involved? And the answer to the question is actually yes. Fundamentally, our body is seasonal. This is what research has shown. I came across this article, and an article written about the paper actually, both of which will be in the show notes. So if you want to read it, you can read it at two different levels. One is a nice summary article, and the other is the full research, both of which are available online. But basically, think about our body. So we have a genetic code, right? And within that genetic code, we have between 20, 25,000 genes in our body. Now imagine if on the order of 20% of those genes changed based on the season. Now, the genes themselves don't change, but which genes are doing the talking can change. And that's what the research has shown us. So think of some genes just going, hey, I'm going to take a nap, and others going, hey, this is my time of year. And interestingly, the genes you would expect during the wintertime, the genes that are very focused on immune response and some other things, those are the ones that get triggered. But summertime, we have different genes that come to the forefront. So the research shows us that while, again, our body doesn't fundamentally change at its structure, which parts of our body are thriving during the summer or more pronounced during the summer are different. And it's kind of a flip side. And they found that what I thought was interesting is they did show that it's a flip-flop, how the human body looks in below the equator and above the equator. It does flip-flop. And they also showed that some places, like I think they looked at Iceland specifically, did not have as large of a seasonal response. Again, maybe it's logical. They don't have as much of a seasonal shift. So their bodies don't show this pronounced change in behavior. Now, what they didn't answer, at least in that article, and I didn't see if there was a follow-up. So maybe if some additional research has been done, or hopefully there will be, about what drives that change in our bodies. So that's still the unknown, right? It's a little bit of chicken and egg. So those gene changes are probably responsible for some of the chemical changes that I talked about. But do those chemical changes also trigger other gene responses? But is it length of day, right? Is it the amount of sunlight? It's logical that it is, but taking the time to prove that can be cumbersome, and we may not get those answers in the short term. Hopefully we will at some point. But the short answer is that for certain people, when your body starts having these base level responses, you view that as a positive. For others, you may not. But it seems like I'm probably more in the minority. And again, not that I don't like summer. It's just not my favorite season. But that may be not at my gene level that I'm doing that. My gene level may respond just like yours or my neighbor next door or anybody else. All the same things. Same cravings, same desire to maybe be awake and alert during sunlight hours. Got up and went for a ride. Where I'm at currently, sunrise at 5:30 in the morning. Now, not everybody deals with that. But that's ideal for me because I like to be up early. And so having sunlight and knowing that, having those triggers that it's daytime outside is probably a good thing for me. But as long as I can get to my air conditioning and stay cool, I'm even better, right? So in the end, even though our body changes, the actual like-dislike may still be more tied to some of those other things, like life experiences. But it is important to know that we have a fundamental change that's going on in our body that at least creates the opportunity for us to say, hey, I like this season more, or I like that season more. I don't know. Thought that was interesting now that we're in the throngs of summer. So if you've ever wondered why you crave summer, I don't have the answer to that. It's probably still individual. But do know your body fundamentally changes and may make you seek out fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, may make you seek out spending more time in the light versus in the dark. So for people that don't like sunlight or that like to stay home and be indoors, maybe summer's not your season. And that's partly why, right? Because it does seem like these genetic changes make us crave at least what's going on in summer, whether we perceive it as like it or not. our genetic structure, our active genes make us behave in a certain way. But then again, that means they also crave other things in the wintertime. But it might be, I don't know, if you're like me, during the winter, I seek out things that give me vitamin C, right? Don't do that so much in the summer. The fruits I get, certainly there's vitamin C in them, but I don't have that craving for like a glass of orange juice or to eat an orange like I do in the wintertime. And again, it's probably driven by the immune response in my body taking over in the wintertime. All right, enough about me babbling about the summer. For those of you that are in the midst of summer, and hopefully you're able to get out and enjoy it, may you, right? But now you realize that somewhere inside of you, it's not just because you like it. Your body is craving the things that you're probably doing in the summertime at a very, very basic genetic level for many of us. 20% of your 20 to 25,000 genes have a seasonal response change. Just think about that. It's pretty meaningful. It's a pretty large amount. Just like you change during the day, it does. Your body changes during the day. It changes in the season. And some other things I came across during all this, some interesting side notes, if you will. We do crave different foods at different times of the year. And this may be as much of an evolutionary thing as, anything else. It was very natural for us, like a lot of creatures in nature, to want to put on some fat and some pounds in the wintertime to kind of hunker down, if you will, because we weren't going to be in our active mode or weren't going to have as much food available to us. So that's why we tend to eat heartier meals, heavier meals going towards wintertime, is to store up. Or maybe why we want it to help us keep us warm, right? So it's not just that we like the taste of the fruit and it happens to be there. I mean, that's kind of a side benefit, but maybe our body knows that as well. It's when those things are available. So we tend to like the lighter foods like fruits and vegetables in the summer seasons. There's even stuff that talks about, and I found this other article. It was interesting that it kind of alludes to some of these chemical changes that take place in us in the different seasons. And then I felt like I was reading my horoscope, what that says about you if you crave a certain season. So if I crave winter, apparently I'm an introvert and a homebody and I just want to stay home and inside, which is funny because if anything, when it's wintertime, I seek things that go to do outside. I don't know. So I'm not sure that those apply. I'll put that one in the show. You can read it. It's a quick read about what it says about you. But I found their analysis a little lacking. Then again, it was just somebody trying to get some people to visit their website. It mentioned the fundamental science behind it up top, but then tried to interpret. And I found the interpretations a little weak. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go and get on to your summer and enjoy your summertime activities. But just remember, somewhere fundamentally inside of you right now, 20% of your body is saying, hey, I know what season it is, and I'm going to tell you to behave differently based on what season it is. But then take that and turn it into positive memories. Look for the connections. Let me know. Let me know if you are a seasonal person, if there's a season you like one more than the other, and you've ever been able to put your finger on why that is, let me know. I'd be interested to hear from you. You can reach me, whatisit.abouttheweather@gmail.com. Of course, you can find the podcast on Twitter at WIIATW. What is it about the weather? But as always, no matter what you're doing out there, whether you're talking to me about it, or talking to your family about it, or a friend, or just thinking to yourself out loud or quietly, think about the weather. But more importantly, think about the weather and how it influences what you do, how it impacts your life. Grow a little bit, or just enjoy. But as we all know, there's much more to weather than the weather itself.